it. Keep the trains running on time. So, Mr. Miller, the San Fernando Valley is home to 1.8 million Angelenos. It has its own distinct identity and culture, and yet this region is often overlooked by City Hall. We'd like to know what role the San Fernando Valley has played in shaping your life, your work, and if elected, what specifically would you change to improve life here?
Well, first, Alex, thank you for having me. I love this city. This city is become a very hard place to live. And we're going to talk about some of the brokenness that we see all around us, whether we're talking about the streets and the sidewalks, the streetlights, the lack of public safety, the homeless encampments, the lack of affordability. But I've built multiple businesses here. I've run multiple nonprofits here, and I've served people in the Valley for decades. I have many friends here. I've had many employees that live here. I've worked with people in this region for a long time, and I've delivered real results. I've created thousands of jobs. I've helped thousands of people get new employment opportunities. I've helped millions of people get educated, and I've helped really thousands of others recover from disasters. And I believe that we have an opportunity to turn the city around, including the Valley, and make this a much safer place to be, make this a much cleaner part of the city, and make this a place of real economic opportunity for everybody.
You mentioned your background in business and in nonprofits. You are running as a political outsider. Can you talk a little bit more about how your experience in that world has influenced how you would run the city, and point to specific examples of city processes, regulations that you would want to overhaul on day one if you were the mayor?
So I've run private companies, I've run public companies, I've worked at nonprofits in multiple different issue areas, and in every case, leadership is the same. If you want results, you have to set a vision, you have to align a team to the goals, you have to operate with excellence, measure results, and hold people accountable. That's how you deliver effective outcomes. And that's what this city desperately needs. We don't have the transparency and accountability that we need, and we have way too much waste and inefficiency across LA. We can fix that, but it's going to require somebody that knows how to operate at scale. This is a complex city with lots of challenges, and we need somebody that knows how to manage a budget, deal with fiscal responsibility, optimize every dollar, and drive efficiency in everything that we do. That will free up dollars to do the things that matter. Increase the number of police, drive more patrols, help us with emergency management, ensure that we're ready for the next disaster, recover more quickly from the disaster we just had, and ensure that we're fixing our infrastructure, fixing those streets and sidewalks and streetlights, and making this a city that works for everybody.
And those are some really big, grand visions. Can you get down to brass tacks? 1, 2, 3, these are very specific on day one. Now I'm mayor. This is what's going to be different that you'll see in day-to-day operations.
Yeah, so I've come up with a 7x7 plan. It's 7 specific goals with 7 tactics to achieve each goal. And the reality is the mayor does not control everything, but the mayor does control 44 departments, 50,000 employees, and a $15 billion budget. So there is tremendous opportunity to get things done, despite what we've seen over the last 4 years. And that means being able to execute starting day one. I believe we could eliminate 80% of the visible encampments and reduce street homelessness by 60%. I believe that we can lower the average cost of rent across the city by 10+%. We can reduce permitting time by 80+%.
But how do you do that? Let's just jump in there, the permitting process.
Let's talk about permitting. Number one, you enable self-certification by licensed architects and engineers, and then audit 20% of the projects instead of reviewing 100%. Number two, you eliminate permits where they shouldn't be required anymore. Non-structural changes to homes that shouldn't be permitted in the first place. Number three, allow for all permits to be submitted online, and have AI validation of the permits. So you don't have to wait 3 months to find out that you missed one question on page 16. Number 4, we can allow for parallel processing of permits. So instead of going from one department at a time, you can have all the departments review at the same time. We also have the ability to leverage innovation across everything we're doing, not just permitting, but police, fire, and all the processes that we do as a government. That's gonna free up dollars, that's gonna eliminate fraud, and give us the funding to do the things that matter.
Mr. Miller, you said earlier that leadership is the same and there may be certain values or strategies that are universal, but as you just alluded to, City Hall is a very different place. You mentioned all those departments, tens of thousands of employees. I'd like to add, most of them are unionized with civil service protections. You've got elected bosses at City Hall. And I think one of the biggest differences between the worlds that you've operated in City Hall is that there is really no profit motive when you are the CEO of the city. So I would like you to share with us what you think would be the biggest stretch for you. What would be the biggest challenge in transitioning from the world that you've operated in to being the CEO of City Hall? And maybe you could give us some specific examples from within your career where you've had to get results out of someone who may not have a financial incentive.
Yeah, I can give you lots of examples, because if I only had a business background, I would agree with the premise of the question. But the reality is I've also been running nonprofits over the last 3 decades. And those nonprofits don't have the financial motivation. And those nonprofits require outcomes based on collaboration and consensus building, not just direction from the CEO. I'll give you a very specific example. I was able to lead a merger of 3 nonprofits in the food allergy space to create what became the world's largest food allergy nonprofit, helping people all over the world. 35 million Americans suffer from food allergies. They now have an advocate on their behalf. I took Team Rubicon as chairman from a tiny nonprofit in LA to become the biggest veteran service organization in the country and one of the top disaster relief organizations in the world. Team Rubicon works on disaster readiness, disaster response, and disaster recovery. LA failed at all 3 of those things. I know how to do better. I also created Better Angels, which is a homelessness nonprofit because of the fact that the city was failing at dealing with the homelessness epidemic. I knew that we could do better and I wanted to prove it. We have, in just the last couple of years, created the #1 homelessness prevention program in LA, and we've kept over 4,500 Angelenos housed who were on the brink of homelessness for 98% less than what it costs the city once they're living on the street. I know how to get results, and those results apply to the public sector as well.
And I do want to delve into housing a bit more in just a moment, but part of that question was, what do you see as your biggest challenge? I appreciate the confidence, but in the traditional job interview, what do you think is your biggest weakness in making this transition? What would it be?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I don't have political experience. So you can argue that that's a major deficit here, but I would argue that we have, as our current mayor, somebody who has incredible political experience and incredible political connections, and yet today, housing production is down 30% since 2019. The film industry is down 40% since 2019. We have the lowest level of housing production in a decade. We can do better. It's not about political experience. It's about operational experience. At the end of the day, running a city at this scale is about operational management and budgetary optimization. That is what we're missing in this city, and that is what I bring to the table. And I'm very unique across the candidates for mayor because I'm the only one that's been doing this for 35 years.
Let's drill down on housing, specifically the question of where to build. As you know, Los Angeles is legally obligated to build hundreds of thousands of homes. We are woefully behind. And a big part of the reason why is there is a whole lot of bickering about where those homes should be built. So the question to you this afternoon is, what drives your understanding of where housing should be built? How much should the Valley be the location of housing? And how does equity inform your approach to where housing is built?
The reality is we need all types of housing. LA has become an incredibly unaffordable place to live, and the single biggest issue around affordability is the cost of housing. Rent is just too damn high. It's way too expensive, much less trying to buy a home here is almost impossible for most people. We can do better across the board. We have to build more affordable housing, more workforce housing, more market rate housing, and we need more condos and townhomes for the middle class. We have to turn this city from being one of the worst places in America to build, which is why most national developers will no longer build in LA. Most national financial institutions will no longer invest in real estate development in LA. We can do better by making it easier, faster, and more predictable to build in LA, and I have a lot of very specific things we could do there, but we have to build across the city in a way that makes sense based on the fact that we have 99 unique neighborhoods in this city, and those neighborhoods have different character, different types of property, different zoning, different groups that are there, and we need to ensure that we are being respectful of those neighborhoods. The neighborhood councils care a lot about the kind of housing that's there, but the reality is everybody knows we need more housing. We need more workforce housing so that our nurses and teachers and firefighters aren't commuting an hour and a half each way to get to work. That creates lots of turnover, and that makes it worse for everybody involved. We can do better in that specialization of the type of housing in different parts of the city means in places like Koreatown or downtown, we can have more infill buildings. We could have more multifamily residential properties. But in places that are more single-family residential, we should be thinking about the corridors around them, the commercial perimeter that they have, and making sure that we are putting housing that makes sense for that neighborhood. For example, 1+4 housing, one level of retail with 4 levels of residential above it, which allows for greater livability, greater walkability in those communities, and at the same time provides a lot more housing for the people.
You have made tiny home villages a centerpiece to your homelessness plan. You say it's a cheaper alternative to the current plan, Mayor Bass's Inside Safe. That said, an investigation of this type of housing, which appeared in LA Public Press, found that more than half of the residents in these village homes end up unhoused again when they leave. Why should voters believe that your vision to address homelessness isn't just trading one revolving door for another revolving door?
Yeah, because I'm not just talking about this stuff, I actually live in this area. I understand this because of all the work I've been doing with Better Angels. We deal with 5 things around homelessness: prevention, services, shelter, housing, and technology. And the city can do better in all 5 of those areas. When we clear the encampments, we need somewhere to put people. And those people could go first and foremost in the 25% of shelter beds that will be empty tonight that already exist in the city. We need much more refined processes and more automation to get people off the street into shelter. Number 2, we need more shelter capacity. Spending $85,000 a year for a hotel room is equivalent to giving an unhoused individual a $7,400 apartment. There are millions of Angelenos that would happily take a $7,400 a month apartment. We can do better by building non-congregant housing. It could be tiny home villages, could be other types of housing for under $10,000 over a 20-year period. We're talking about orders of magnitude less expensive than what we're doing with Inside Safe. On top of that, we should be specializing our shelter capacity and enabling the services to be delivered at the shelters, not on the street. It would dramatically reduce the cost of services, while simultaneously making them much more effective. And we see this at places like SPY in Venice with transition age youth. We see it at the Downtown Women's Center with single moms. We also see it at places like Share, which is doing addiction recovery. There are effective programs in the city that should be scaled up and modeled after, and we can do this more cost effectively and much more efficiently than what we're doing today, and that's the only way we're going to solve our homeless epidemic.
Mr. Miller, currently businesses in the city of Los Angeles pay taxes based on their gross receipts, not on their actual revenue. And you'll hear it over and over again from business owners. They say this is absolutely devastating. They say this is why businesses are leaving LA. And yet, on the other end, this gross receipts tax pays something along the lines of $800 million into our general fund, which we need for critical services. Where do you stand on the gross receipts tax? Do you think it's something we should keep? Would we modify it? And if you were the mayor, how would you address this truly unprecedented tension between business owners who say it's no longer feasible to do business here and the dire financial straits we see at City Hall?
So I'm the only candidate that not only has nonprofit experience and operational experience, but extensive business experience. I ran small businesses and I've ran big companies, including a decade as a public company CEO. I understand business, and a lot of things that we're doing in this city are anti-business, anti-real estate, and putting us in the position that we're in today, where there's not enough jobs, where rent is way too high, where we're not building enough housing, and we're not creating opportunity for people all across LA. I would turn that around day one with an economic council that works with the private sector constantly that I would chair, with the creation of 100,000 new jobs, with a very clear plan for bringing Hollywood back to Hollywood, with the focus on supporting businesses instead of opposing businesses, and part of that includes getting rid of the gross receipts tax. There is a reason that if you go to downtown LA, one of the biggest cities in the country, we have some of the least number of Fortune 500 companies. Why is that? In part because of the gross receipts tax. Why don't we have more real estate development here? In part because of ULA. We're making decisions that don't make sense. We talk about the 800 million. It doesn't mean that businesses wouldn't be taxed. It just means they wouldn't be taxed on gross receipts. And that is a huge problem for any large corporation, which is why LA doesn't have large corporations anymore. They've all moved out. We can bring them back by having common sense policies and programs to support businesses. There's also a ton of things we should be doing for small businesses. I'm constantly talking to small business owners. I work with a lot of CEOs, and I understand how hard it is to make payroll, keep the doors open, but it's virtually impossible to run a small business or a restaurant if you have encampments in front of your front door. It's virtually impossible to get a permit in any reasonable period of time if you have a great idea and you want to start a business, or your business is going well and you want to expand. We make it so difficult for businesses to succeed here. We can turn that around, but we need a mayor that understands business and understands how to get things done.
We have about a minute and a half left in our time. One of the things you also hear frequently from small business owners is about the issue of public safety. Right now, the city of LA is on track for the lowest homicide total in 60 years, and yet, as I'm sure you've been hearing, many Angelenos do not feel safe. If elected, what concrete steps would you take to further reduce crime in the city, and what specifically do you think needs to happen so that people feel safe?
It doesn't matter what the statistics say. You talk to people north, south, east, west in this city, and nobody feels safe in their neighborhoods, and even more distressingly, feel safe in their homes. We have to double the patrols. We do not have enough patrols in the city. In fact, we have less than half of most other major cities. That's why the cops can't respond fast enough. That's why we're not being proactive in what we're doing in fighting crime. We have to bring our police force up to a minimum of 10,000 officers. We have to modernize the police force. We're operating like it's 1980. We should have a digital command center. We should be leveraging innovations that are in widespread use in other cities to be more effective at law enforcement and improve public safety. We have to add not just car patrols, but foot patrols in our most urbanized areas. We should specialize portions of the force to focus on clearing the homeless encampments, because right now, the homeless issue is taking up about 40% of police time and 60% of the calls to the fire department. We have to have specialization with people that know how to deal with drug addiction and mental illness, and keep people who are fighting crime. We also not only have to deal with police, but we have to deal with fire and emergency management. Unfortunately, 17 months later, this city is no more prepared for a disaster than it was in January of 2025, and that is terrible. We can do better. We have to improve emergency management. We have to leverage innovation with the fire department. We have to get our equipment working and modernized, and all of this is feasible, but it requires operational experience and a will to get it done. It also requires freeing up budget from the waste and fraud that we're seeing all over our city's operation and applying it to the things that matter: public safety and infrastructure, which are fundamental rights of the people in this city.
Adam Miller, our time is almost up. I want to ask you one question. It is a yes or no. You are running as a Democrat. If you do not make it and there is a runoff election in the fall, would you endorse and support whichever Democrat might be in that race, if there is one?
Well,
It's a yes or no. It's a yes or no. Could be a maybe.
it depends who's in it. If I'm in it, obviously I'm supporting a Democrat because I'm a Democrat.
If you don't make it, then it depends? Depends could be a one-word answer.
It depends.
That's fair.
And the reality is, if a Republican advances against the mayor is going to win. The city is 80% Democrats, and that's the reality. So the only way we're going to get a new mayor is if it's a Democrat running against a Democrat, and I'm the only Democrat in this race that's got the operational experience to fix LA.
Adam Miller, thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.